welcome to Wrestling and Everything, Coast to Coast, with your host, Buddy Sotelo Esquire, effervescent Evan Ginsberg. And Evan, would you like to introduce our guest?
Absolutely. Our guest is one of my dearest friends. He is Chris Michaels, who worked for not only WWE, but also Herb Abrams' UWF, ECW as part of the Tag Team Champions when Eddie Gilbert was the booker, pre-Paul Heyman. And he's had an interesting wrestling career, and he has a GoFundMe we're going to talk about a bit later as well. And that's our intro for Chris Michaels. How are you tonight, Chris?
Doing great. Thanks so much, guys, for having me here. It's not my first time. I'm not a first timer, and like those guys say, not my first rodeo. My field response would be, really, what are rodeo clowns making these days? But I'm glad to be here.
Now let me start with the obvious. You have a shirt that says jobber, and I know that many wrestlers do not like the term jobber. So what's up with the shirt?
I'm not sensitive to that because it's I mean, I could see if I was an ultimate fighter in the octagon and I was like, trying to win for real. But in scripted performance art, kind of hard to have an ego. So, and even Ric Flair, he like to call what we would call jobbers, because that's just what it was. It was tough business. So if a name like Jobber offends you with a tough business where you're getting chairs smashed over your head, I mean, that's really top of the list of things that get you upset. I wear it as a badge of honor.
But you were also a star in UWF. You were a champion in ECW. So it's not an all-encompassing term for your career. So,
well, I mean, there's always got to be a bottom guy, and that's how it is. Someone has to win, someone has to go, someone has to lose. You can't always have a double DQ, a double count out, a Broadway to someone saying, "Well, Broadway? I don't go to Broadway. I don't like that kind of stuff." Like, you don't understand. And to understand that you would watch guys like Ric Flair and Dusty Rhodes do a 1 hour match, and come to the back, and some of these guys get done doing their 15-minute flippy doing it, and the guys need an oxygen tank and a defibrillator. It's crazy. So it's definitely a performance art, but let's not mistake the fact that guys like the Road Warriors personified what business was about back then.
So, Chris, tell us how you got started in professional wrestling. You disappeared on us there.
One second. I little glitch here. I have a
beauty of those premium backgrounds. You wear the wrong shirt and you literally disappear.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I guess with the shirt itself, you're going back up. All right.
There, you're back.
Yep.
So tell us how you got started in professional wrestling.
All right. During my time in the U.S. Army, I was stationed in Fort Polk, which is located in Louisiana, and Mid-South Wrestling was there, and also Championship Wrestling. I wasn't WCW then, but they had the Georgia Wrestling. But I know it was Flair, the Mid-South, which eventually turned the UWF too. That was also a UWF with Cowboy Bill Watts, not to be mistaken with Herb Abrams. And it was the hard-hitting stuff that I liked. And they came to the Fort Polk Fieldhouse, so we got to see them. And I was watching it in real life, and I said, okay, I'm watching it because it was a little slower. So I got to see the timing involved, the boom and bang and look, and I'm like, okay, I think I could do this. And then one drunken night out in the field with a bunch of guys, We were like, hey man, let's try one of them suplex things. When you have it, you don't feel it. You felt it the next day, but after doing a couple of those things, we watched them, we thought we knew what we were doing, but once I knew that I could kind of take the impact of the stuff, that I kind of had the itch for it. Couldn't do anything. I was in the army, and it wasn't until a chance meeting of an employee that I worked with, a coworker, whose father had a wrestling school. Because I was just goofing around about, wrestling, and I was going to body slammer and this and that. And people, oh yeah, my dad will body slam. He's a wrestler. I'm like, what? No, you kidding me? Right? He goes, no. And he's got a wrestling school. I'm like, no. This is like too good to be true. And then that's where it started. Out in Hauppauge, Long Island, Mark Kendler had a wrestling school in his garage. Now that's old school as hell because there was no mats, no padding, no trampoline that some people think we're bouncing on. Trampoline. No, it was a garage floor with some 2x4s, plywood, and some of that rolled gym matting that you see them doing collegiate style wrestling in the auditoriums in schools. That's it. I had to learn a back bump on that. These other kids are training in a ring. Luxury. That's it. And but during that time, Puerto Rico and Japan were the hot spots for guys trying to break in. And you had to train rough because if you trained soft and went to Japan, boy, you not only get your clock clean, you come back with a whole new perspective on what it's like to be in a type of wrestling where they appreciate the working tight. That's the best way to say it. Not stiff. It's tight, stiff. One man's tight, another man's stiff. But the believability aspect behind it, which is what I took from at least the era that I got with part of it.
Russ, is this sound okay? Because I'm missing a few words here and there.
It isn't great. You might want to try it without the headphones.
Well, how about this?
Oh, that sounds a lot better.
Yeah, there's no mic in my headphones. My microphone moved over when I moved my chair.
Oh, okay, now it sounds better.
Yeah, sorry about that. When I turned my mic is on. I was on a gooseneck, so it kind of like did a little 180 on me. I didn't realize it went away.
No, now you sound fine.
Okay.
The beauty of so can you just repeat everything you just said for the last 5 minutes completely over again and make it seem like it's totally spontaneous?
Well,
No.
let's see.
One thing I've always been really fascinated with in when I've researched it is I've always been fascinated with Herb Abrams and what he was all about. Tell me what your experience with Herb Abrams was like.
As far as getting chummy with the boss and stuff, I wasn't on that kind of level because I never ever felt that getting that close with the guy that's paying you is good business. But it was professional enough with where I was treated with respect, not like some piece of meat. And he did have some plans for me. Ironically, I married his producer's niece. I ended up meeting her at one of the shows, and that was a story in itself. But they were
That's
going
a
to
good
do
story.
something.
Why don't you go with that story? That actually sounds
Okay.
pretty interesting.
Well, it's she came to a show when I was doing the Corporal Chris Michaels that they had me during that time. I put the my army fatigues on and had the buzz cut, kind of like what the Nasties looked like a little bit. That kind of haircut, just not bald on the sides. And I met her at one of the shows, and she, I think when I was getting ready to leave, at one of the shows, she waved to me when I was on my way out, and then when I came to one of the other ones that came after their Penta show, their big one they did in New York. Her sister saw me getting out of the elevator, and she's like, "Hey, listen, my sister wanted to give you a message that they heard you were going to be here and this and that." And I ended up meeting back up with her later on. I think the first day I met her, I think we sat up like an entire night just talking. Of course, naturally we had to go to upstate the next day to do another show, but it was like just meeting someone, finally getting, like getting to know them and stuff and this and that. At least, what was the 6.5 year marriage that, eventually it ran its course, and the life of a wrestler. But no kids or anything, so no connection after we split up. So I know that she had moved on, got married herself, ended up having triplets. So she had a handful. So I'm unfortunate that she didn't have that fertility when I was with her, because I don't know if I could have handled triplets. I don't know. That's just, but
She's as fertile as a Kansas wheat field after a spring rain.
And yeah,
woo!
I have twins, so she can honestly point to me and say that I'm a slacker, because all I have is just twins.
Yeah, well, you just like, look, I'm doing this once. That's it.
True. It's true.
Russell Jackman with the super sperm, like in Rapper's Delight.
All right. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Let's not
Yeah.
go there. Let's,
Yeah.
But I mean, but what was Herb really like? I mean, there's a lot of stories about Herb Abrams, so I'd like to know what your thoughts were working with him and being so big of a part of UWF.
Well, I mean, the real bad stuff I heard is really after his demise. I didn't know that he was that he enjoyed the white man's aspirin. Um, apparently, that was also his demise, as he destroyed a motel room with a baseball bat, I think, and stark naked, or however the story goes. But I mean, if anything, if going out with the blaze of glory is, holy cow. Um, like I said, on a personal level, uh, you know, uh, I really didn't have like that. Like a guy like Sonny Beach was more of a guy that, because he was more of a higher tier guy. I was still just slightly less greener than goose shit at that point. So I was in just a couple of years and I was getting some traction, but not at the level where I could actually have like a guy like him, devote any kind of time to me, other than, he's an up and coming guy. Let's see what he's got. They paired me with Tom Brandy, and we tried doing a little something with that. They wrestled Power Twins, and so we did a couple things here and there with that. And it's just like it was like Tom Brandy, the Chippendales guy. I'm coming out as a USA guy. Two contrasting looks. It's like kind of hard to make that work.
Okay, so yeah, so tell me like some of the talents that you worked with in some of these feds, and who were some of the notable people that you worked directly with or had matches with.
Uh well, my first notable person that I had ever wrestled was Cowboy Bob Orton for the Savoldis for ICW, before they become ICW Alphabet Soup, with the ICW, WWCCW, whatever. But they merged with World Class. And I remember that because it was up in upstate New York. There's a couple of places upstate, some penitentiaries where the guys go away, and it was one of the towns that had one of those prisons. We were there, and I wrestled Cowboy Bob. He gave me the superplex thing, and then in the we were in a Swiss chalet, so that's where we were bedded up for the night, because that's the town we were in. We're all around, and as the wrestlers would sit around and yap and tell stories. He taught me how to open a glass beer bottle, with a big cigarette lighter. So that was like my first like thing on the road. That was like, wow, Cowboy Bob teaching me a road trick. Open a can, a bottle of beer with a big lighter. So that was like my first cool little interaction with that.
Better than using your eye socket to do it.
Well, I don't know if what impresses the girls. I think it depends on your crowd. I mean, if you're in a place that they have a mosh pit, I think that would be over pretty good.
You sure? But maybe usually they open their beer bottles by smashing it over the head of the person next to them.
Or they bite it off, right?
Yes.
It's only glass. Oh, yeah.
The, So, like, tell me, like, some of like what you would consider like your most notable matches, like that you had had.
Well, let's see. The one match that probably could have ignited more of a wrestling career for me is when I worked Ric Flair. Um, he told me to put him in a headlock, which for me to sit there, I paused. I was like, huh? And then I didn't respond fast enough, and then he took over, and then I caught about 20 some odd chops during the match. I, got the figure four, the whole nine. But I mean, it was a good sell because as I was doing, you could hear the announcing, but my leg was wobbling, falling underneath the weight of my body and stuff. So I mean, I just the sell part was good. My agents, Tony Gurria, Renee Goulet, uh, Terry Garvin, um, they were all, they were very much liked what I did because I made their like Sergeant Slaughter, for instance, my first WWF match. That was the match before the pay per view, the match made in hell, Hogan and Warrior and Sergeant Slaughter with the Sheep being General being Colonel Mustafa. So he came out. I did the whole match with him, made him look like Superman. I even did the Ric Flair bump in the corner, ran to the other side. He picked, he threw me the body slam, that whole thing. That part got completely cut out, of course. But when I got done for completely making him look good, then after they beat the crap out of me after the end of the match because they had to do the sell before the pay per view, like when there was only like maybe 4 a year, and immediately after the match, he went in to Vince and sung high praise for me because I just anything he did, I just made him look the strongest that he could possibly be before the pay per view, and that which was nice for me. It made me feel good that the training that I went through, not having an ego, doing what is required of me in an industry, like I said, it's a performance art industry where you got to be a little tough. And for me, like wrestling the Nasty Boys, I'll give a good for instance with that. Brian Knobs was having difficulty with a lot of the preliminary guys with the particular spot that he was doing. Now they had just recently lost their tag belts, and of course they're angry. They want their belts back, and it was a whole problem. So he's out there. He's like, okay, look, I got to throw you in the corner, and when you hit that corner, I just want you to face bump, fall flat down. I'm like, all right, I got you. So they, did their thing. They got me in the corner, bolted them on each side, beat the crap out of me, slapping the hell out of me, beat me down, gets to that spot where he throws me in. And as he's getting ready to where he has to usually throw someone, like push them down because they weren't going down, I was already like um, about halfway down when he turned around and noticed, and he just like guided me down, just touched my shoulder, and just made it look like he gave me a push. So when I got done, I went to the back. I looked at him. I was like, everything was okay. Because first he thought I was going to go back like a lot of guys now would go back and cry about the ass whooping they just took. But it's look at who you were working. You're working the Nasty Boys, the reputation they had. So what it's like complaining about after getting beaten up by the Road Warriors. What do you think was going to happen to you? So, I was like, everything was okay. And he was, brother, everything was beautiful. You hit that spot perfectly. And, when I turned around, you were already down. I did, you noticed I just touched you. I didn't have to push you down, nothing, man. Next time, brother, it's easy. It's kids. Nothing. You do nothing next time. I was like, cool. Next time I worked him, sure as shit, promise kept. I did a couple things, tagged my guy. The other guy took all the heat. So, these, what a lot of the guys that don't understand, especially being younger, and especially working with seasoned guys on TV and stuff, is that there's a reputation. We were doing the TV tapings at that time, but it's still in front of a live audience. And, the way you conduct yourself will guarantee either more or less bookings. Coming in there with an ego will, depending on how talented you are, will either get you blackballed or pushed. Depends on who you are, how big you are, and what potential you got. But for the most part, like anything else, you go in there, you do what the boss asks you to do.
Great. Evan, do you have a question for Chris?
Yeah, Chris, we have a GoFundMe that we want to promote. Tell us about your dog. Let me preface it with that is not Chris's palatial estate. That is a backdrop.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Backdrop.
It's like, you know, I make my I make my summer residence in Cocoa Beach, Florida.
Yes.
No, oh wait, no, I'm not doing Team Splendid anymore. No, that's right. I'm a redneck now. So our Pudgy, our beloved Pudgy, uh, caught suddenly ill right around Memorial Day weekend. What started out is what would just some dysentery, diarrhea for those who don't know. We figured, like, you know, the old remedy, a little bit of rice will help bind them up, maybe a little chicken broth, nothing too crazy. And, you know, we'll be, you know, rolling like normal and everything's good to go. Next day, my daughter tells me that after feeding him, he ended up throwing up. And then I go to the camera, I go back to the history, I look it up, and I see he threw up in the house and got all over the place. And then next day did it outside, same thing. But the smell of it was like he had had a bowel movement, so we knew that something was definitely not right because couldn't keep anything down. But it was just something was off. Took him to my primary vet, and they checked him out. You know, they're saying, okay, well, you know, getting weak and not eating, and of course, with all the vomiting and diarrhea, you know, and everything else, he's getting severely dehydrated. And they wanted to do a quick X-ray because they felt a little something like a mass, what it is, around the spleen area. So they gave him a quick X-ray in their office, looked, seen where the mass was, but you got to get an ultrasound done. And I think, considering the time of day, I believe that we got there, their office was closing shortly, and for the time it takes to do all of that and analyze everything, it takes, you know, way longer, and then we have to come back the next day. They felt it was urgent enough that if we had to immediately go to this other place, well, a veterinary emergency group, where it's a 24-hour place with actual rooms you can go in, which is awesome. But we went there to get checked for the mass. They did the ultrasound. Thank God it wasn't ruptured. But yes, what they had suspected with the X-ray, mass on the spleen, has to be removed. So also because of his condition, so weak and severely dehydrated, he had to be there and stay on 12-hour observation. And one of the photos on the GoFundMe, you could actually see where the IV is in his front arm or paw, whatever you want to say. So he had to be there for that. I spent the night with him because I was able to be in a room with him. I couldn't imagine him to be alone by himself in a cage all night long. I wouldn't do that to him because that's how we met, in a cage. He was in a cage, so I wasn't going to do that. I didn't want to break his spirit. I figured if I'm there, it'll give him that will to live, because the look in his eyes when I was bringing him in is that he was already accepting death. So I had to be diligent in what I was doing and, you know, really, you know, make a decision, and, you know, in everyone's best interest. So checked it out. They even, thank God for this place, this veterinary group, even researched a place that was cheap enough to go ahead and do it. Like, that was even lower in the budget. They found a place that's way cheaper than them. For them to do it, if I stayed there, and because those people are excellent, it would have cost me. It would have been 15,000 for that procedure. For the one procedure that we got done was a little over 3, just for that one particular one. So they had helped to do that. So the place they had sent us to get it done, took it out, and what they had told us too, the setup for it first before surgery was, we're going in to see what it is, see what the mass is, this and that, and see what what can be done. If they go in there and they don't see anything, and if it's bad, you know, they're gonna say, well, you know, they'll bring him out from this after going to a major procedure and this and that. The other thing, they were recommending to euthanize him. So, you know, then we had that to deal with, you know, the stress with that. So, you know, well, of course, naturally, you know, because we're talking about this, it went our way, fortunately. But we went, had it done, mass removed. Thankfully, no cancer. But all of these things, 3 different veterinary places, and everything added up. The additional cost and everything. So we're up, a little over $7,000 with that, and then the ongoing care because the threat X-rays from the original doctor, we had noticed. I see that his spine had some alignment problems just by his shoulder area, and his hips, his back legs, as Evan can tell you, is at times he's a little frail in the back legs or has a little difficulty trying to turn around or something because his legs are falling out from underneath him. So there's that little bit of extra. I just want to try this animal chiropractic that I've seen a particular guy that's out of Manhattan over here that works on farm animals, thoroughbred racehorses, and I watched it before, and at least the successful ones of what happened. So I'm willing to do whatever I can to give him as much comfort as possible.
So to make a long story short, Chris set up a GoFundMe. He's out over $7,000. Plus, there's going to be continuous care, that Pudgy still needs. And I know Pudgy is a wonderful dog, very good temperament. And if you can help in any way, please.
Very much appreciated.
And let me add this. So Chris is 63, going on 64 very soon. He wakes up at the crack of dawn to support his family, and he's never asked anybody for a penny. This is, for a beloved family member. And, my mother, Chris knew my mom. My mother used to say, if everybody gave $1, it would be okay. And between us, we know thousands and thousands of people. So, we know money is tight for folk. And, but, if you could throw in $1 or $2 into the till, we greatly appreciate it. Plus, we have a big show coming up, July 12th in Astoria, Queens. It's going to be a 6-hour musical show, and hopefully we'll have magicians and stand-ups and everything else. We're putting this together as we speak. And Chris, tell them a little about the event, where it is, and they could come out and support that also.
Well, I'd actually have to turn around and look at my computer, so you may have to see the back of my head because our friend Nick had put the details in our chat for the location of the event in Astoria. So I'd have to actually turn around. Then you might lose me again. But look at the housekeeping. I'm telling you, it's not a spot, not a dog here to be found. It's, I think it's great. Okay, so from the shadows, we are looking at, all right, the event is July 12th. They are going to have the event page. He said that you're going to post. I'm just looking at what he told us to say he's not going to be there. So we have that at the events page. When he gets it for us, we can post it on it. But I don't have the actual address of the place on the name and sorry, man, because I was so worried about doing those, getting this set up and taking care of a little bit. So we were expecting him to go ahead and fill in the gap on that. But I know he said he's putting together the events page for us and the artists. And
it's the Shillelagh Tavern, 47-22 30th Avenue in Astoria, Queens. And that's July 12th from 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. We're going to ask for a donation, a small donation at the door, but if people can or can't afford it, whatever you could give is appreciated. It's the Shillelagh Tavern, 47-22 30th Avenue in Astoria, July 12th, 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. It's going to be a 6-hour live variety show. all kinds of great musicians and different performers, and we're still piecing together the lineup. But it's a lovely little place, friendly, warm. Come on down. There'll be wrestlers there. There'll be all kinds of performers there. It'll be a special day, and that's another way you could help.
And also, don't forget the man of honor himself, Pudgy, will be in attendance.
Well, before we got
In
on
all
this
his
call,
hurry.
and you switched over to your jobber shirt, you were wearing a shirt of Ox Baker.
Yes.
And
that Ox Baker gave to me and signed on the back. That's when I had my back. That's his signature. So that only went on just because of this and in his memory. And if I knew I could have put a better background on there to put the shirt over better, I would have loved to have done that.
one of my favorite videos, though, is of Ox Baker and his Dachshunds, and he is talking about doing a wrestling show for a no-kill shelter to help promote raise funds for a no-kill shelter out in where he used to live. And he just, one thing about Ox Baker is maybe he was rough, maybe he was tough, maybe he was the guy that would scare the heck out of you. But when it came to dogs, he was just a big softie, and he cared
Brock
so
Lesnar,
much.
I hear, is also. Brock Lesnar is supposed to be a real mush for animals and stuff. He's a farm boy, so I mean, I would expect that. Curly from the Three Stooges, he was another big helper when it came to abandoned dogs and homeless dogs. You just be surprised. The one thing is that they give you so much. They don't judge you, despite the many faults and reasons we give them not to. But they love us despite ourselves. And in his case, like I said, when I saw him accepting, I'm accepting my mortality. That was kind of like my thing to say, you know what, everybody failed this poor guy. I want to be the one to let him have his forever home and have a forever home and have some more good memories and more great time with the family. That's really what it's all about. It's he's the silent listener when you're when you're happy, when you're sad, and the comedian and the welcome home. The most important part, and Evan knows the same for his kiddies. The welcome home. I wouldn't trade that for anything. It just means something.
Let me just add, in my book, Wrestling Rings, Blackboards, and Movie Sets, I have a piece on Team Splendid, which is Chris Michaels and Bobby C. But Chris has moved on to a new gimmick, Uncle Billy and NYWC, and thus the long white beard that
I was gonna put my Uncle Billy shirt on, but I figured let me put this on for comedic effect.
Okay, yeah. And I'm just gonna read a few snippets about Chris himself. Okay, Chris was a former ECW tag champ along with Chris Candido and Johnny Hotbody. He also worked in WWE against such legends as The Undertaker and Ric Flair. Okay. I was honored to accompany Team Splendid to the ring as their valet and chauffeur, Mr. Evans. And Chris is a proud veteran who served his country. And I go on to say that sometimes our politics are not the same, but we're dear friends in spite of it. And I could go on and on and on, but Chris has a big heart and would be there for you in a second. Okay? If you had a breakdown on the road at 3 a.m., Chris and Bobby would be ready with a boost. Salt of the earth, as they used to say. And I go on and on about both of them. And the reason I'm saying it is I know that there's a zillion GoFundMes out there, and money's tight. So again, if everybody gave a buck or two, we'd be forever in your debt. And this
would be very much appreciated. It's for the sake of for the dog himself, because I could have went the easy route, $50, put him down and save few grand, and but I have
Couldn't
a
do
heart.
it. Couldn't do it.
I have a heart. That's something because he helped me. Well, Evan knew my Uncle Sammy, and I don't know if he ever met my Aunt Mina, but he did know my Uncle Sammy, and I had the two of them within a year and a half, uh, one right after the other. I mean, with them, and the two of us between all the funerals and stuff. How many times do you see me up there eulogizing people? It was horrible. I've been with Evan a couple times there. It's like we share the funerals too. It's the sad occasion, and we're watching our friends drop like flies because of, the age we are. It's sometimes it feels like survivor's guilt. But I'm so glad to get up.
Chris helped put together. I've done thousands and thousands of radio, TV, podcast over the years, thousands since 1991. I was on WBAI. Chris was up there all the time for 16 years. And to this day, I say one of the most meaningful shows I ever did was Chris helped put together a tribute to promoter Bobby Lombardi. And for those of you who don't know Bobby had the doghouse. It was the border of Brooklyn and Queens, tough neighborhood. And he saved a lot of kids from the streets, and guys like Homicide and Low Key were weaned there. And Chris really, put together this incredible tribute to Bobby. While he was alive, he came on the show. It was like a living memorial because at the time he had already lost a leg and he was very sick, and he didn't have much longer. He was gone. He was gone I would say 2-3 years after that, Chris.
Yeah, right. Because we made him the dog tags. We made him the that crystal tribute. And then he was like, "Yeah, I want to promote one more." Be like, if anyone, could just one more show. He just wanted to promote the one more show, and that was his only dream that he had left. Yeah, it's like anything else. Like I've heard said before, and I believe it wholeheartedly, is that the biggest place of broken dreams and unrealized expectations is the cemetery. So if you've got something that you want to do it. Tomorrow's not guaranteed.
Yeah. And my point being, Chris has been there for many, many people, and hopefully the fans will do the same for him. The one time, this is the first and only time he's ever asked. So it's a $7,000 hit is a lot for a the typical working person. It's a hit. It's not.
Well, especially living around the New York City area, because the only thing we're not getting taxed on is the air we breathe. But I shouldn't say it too loud. They might vote on it.
I had a house rabbit that needed a $2,300 surgery years ago, and the poor guy died after that. Oh my God, that was, So I've been there myself. You love your pet and you do whatever you can to save them. And now I have two cats that we rescued. They were living under a car. One of their siblings had his tail cut off, sleeping in an engine to stay warm, in a car engine. So it's
that happens a lot in the wintertime. That's the one thing I gotta worry about is to check the cold. If it's a warm engine, if it's a freezing cold engine, you don't have to worry about it. But that's the one thing we had to worry about because there's a lot of strays in my neighborhood. Well, at least one.
And my dog Chance was on the streets for most of his life and was found, abandoned by a homeless person, and we got him from a rescue place as well. So, I do understand. And he also has been having some leg problems that we may have to get veterinary work for. And the vet just said they didn't know what was wrong, but to try to find out what was wrong, they wanted $1,400. So, and they didn't even know what was wrong. So it's like, the only thing I can tell you, having owned a pet, is that if they say it's going to cost them $1,400 to find out what's wrong, whatever they find out is wrong is going to cost more than $1,400 to fix.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it's like it almost makes me think of the old Carney way of weeding out the jock sniffer. It's too late now. They made wrestling sports entertainment, but it was genius. The wrestling school uh, would be $3,000 would be the tuition. 1,500 would have to be paid up front, non-refundable $1,500 deposit. Plus, you also sign the waiver fee when you go out there and get the boot, get the crap kicked out of you, and then if you come back, you pay your balance of your tuition and payments. And if you didn't, the wrestling school just made $1,500, and we just kept the jock sniffer on the other side of the guardrails. Well, we tried that for so long that eventually we had to succumb, and now it's the on the independent level, it's frightening. I see guys that are in their 30s, and I'm embarrassed of them because when I take my shirt off, I put it to shame, and I'm pushing 64, and I'm like, guys, come on, man, it's you have to make it believable at some point. Everyone just can't be regular guys going out there. It's oh man, it's just so disappointing how the wrestling, how the whole kayfabe went away. But at least thank God for Magic that they haven't let the cat out of the bag for Magic yet, because that's one of the last hopes that we have left. Is Magic is still Magic. Let them never change Magic, please.
And Chris, tell us a little about your friend Nick, who's helping us with all of this.
Well, Nick, who was telling me about, well, he reached out to me actually to do this charity.
Give his last name.
He said it to you, and I'm still trying to remember. He kind of, what he said, a Puerto Rican Greek. That's the combination you get.
Yeah.
But he said he watched me on TV as a kid, and on UWF and this and that. And then I worked for him when he was doing a wrestling promotion some time ago. And then he said because I helped him so much when they were doing the wrestling thing, because I was kind of like their commissioner, because I was like in my time that I wasn't wrestling at that point because I just didn't feel like doing it. And because I guess I was nice enough to him that he felt I respected him nice enough that he just reached out and said he wants to help me cover all the expense and do what he can. So I'm like, wow, pays to be nice. It's I always try to be encouraging and try to be constructive because the only way you're going to help somebody get better is to say it in a loving way to improve and not in a derogatory way, which will just get them to say, who the hell are you? But if it's said in such a loving way that maybe it's something that you did that hurt you or got an injury or something like that, and prevent yourself from doing that, But a lot of them now, they're just, unfortunately, they're superstars. I get some kids, they haven't even gotten a full 2 years in between training and doing the first couple matches, and they've already got gimmick. They've got stuff at a gimmick table. I'm like, holy cow, holy cow! 2 years in, and you already got merchandise. And when I was 2 years in, I didn't even know who the hell I was in wrestling, gimmick wise or anything else.
I hope I'm pronouncing his name right, but it's Nick Cataralis. I hope that's correct.
Close enough.
Close enough. Okay. Okay.
So the free publicity, he'll have to take it. If he wanted better pronunciation, he could have been here tonight. So.
That's right. He could have been here. That's okay. He's got. Well, he had other things he was mentioning that was going on prior to meeting up with us earlier today. So
Chris, can you tell me? Who would you have wanted to work with in your career? Is there someone that you wanted to work with in your career, but you were never able to actually get in the ring with or work with in any of the feds that you're on? And we got you disappearing again. You're doing the Invisible Man.
Oh,
now you're back.
Oh yeah, I was just making sure my mic was next to me. I was mentioning to Evan earlier when I spoke to we were speaking with Nick when we were here for a brief little lunch meeting. Crap, it's lost my train of thought. Holy crap.
Who would you have liked to work with that
Oh,
you
right.
didn't?
We we were, and you were actually part of it too, Evan. Before COVID, I was supposed to, with Team Splendid, with Bobby C, work the Rock and Roll Express, which for me would have been one of the greatest things ever because those were two of the guys that I watched at in Mid South Wrestling. I mean, I didn't want to be the Rock and Roll Express, but I wanted to be able to work like them and get that kind of heat and get that, I mean, get that kind of pop because the girls down there, when they would come out, holy crap, the pop they got from, you're talking them people, especially down there where they took wrestling like religion. You couldn't say wrestling was fake, man. They beat your ass.
Some of the best nights of my life was seeing Rock and Roll Express against Midnight Express live. That was
Oh,
wrestling elevated
absolutely.
to heart.
Just the way that, like, sometimes, like with Jim Cornette would do the thing where he hugs one of the Midnight Express, and then the other guy like goes to do the hug, and like he turns away, and then he hugs Jim Cornette again. There's like dopey spots like that where it's like it breaks the tension for a moment, but no one was a better babyface selling than Ricky Morton. Just to getting the crap kicked out of him and you know everyone wanted to jump out of their seat and get in the ring and help him. I mean, that's the kind of charisma that he had and connecting with the audience, and that's what I wanted. But there's this, I guess, the time and the alignment of the planets and stuff like that where it works out for some and not others, but it would have been nice. I think
Yeah.
that would have been that one feather in my cap to say, wow, after everybody I worked over the years and stuff, I would have actually got to see someone that I watched that motivated me to want to get involved with wrestling.
Okay, well, that's great. So, do you have anything that, and usually this is an Evan question, but I'll throw it out there anyway, which is that if you could have changed something in your career, is there something that you would have done differently or something you would have rather tried to do that you never got around to doing while you were wrestling?
Well, Evan might know what I'm aiming towards on this one. Uh, I may have, if and I guess the way that things lined up, if my mother didn't die on Mother's Day of a stroke in 1987, I would have reenlisted and been a drill sergeant. I probably would have never been a wrestler. Maybe my marriage wouldn't have split. Maybe I would have stayed with my kids. Maybe my son wouldn't have turned out the way he did. So in that respect, maybe I may not have stepped in there and just been a dad. So I have a little regret in that respect because of there is no guarantees in anything, whatever it is. But sometimes showing up, which and even in the movie 350 Days, there's a lot of regret with those people as well with just showing up because there's just something about uh, your kid or grandkid just looking around, and then all of a sudden locking eyes with you in the crowd. You can't match that. And I couldn't match that with the loudest pop I got from the best spot ever. Looking back, if I could change something.
Okay. So do you spend a lot of time watching today's wrestling at all?
No, no, no. When and like what I was mentioning earlier today, I won't forget this one. I was mentioning like today with some of the scenarios that they set up to get the guy positioning himself on the turnbuckle while there's 8 guys like popping up out of nowhere in position to catch the guy. I'm like, oh, come on. Like, where's the spontaneity and stuff? And besides that, the heel in me just wants to let the guy take a header and pick him up, put him in the ring, and take the 1, 2, 3 and get out. But it just looks so, yeah, just so set up and not organic. And that just takes it, for me, it just takes away the believability to it because who is actually going to stand there and wait for a guy to jump on them? It's a, I like the old-fashioned thing, you throw the guy out of the ring, you grab the rope and launch yourself on him. That's different. It's like, it's the element of surprise, but it's too planned out, and it just to me, it makes it look more circusy.
Okay, well, I mean, that's a legitimate take. So, Evan, do you have any final questions for our guest here
Well,
tonight?
saying wrestling is circusy, I know that's like the biggest biggest oxymoron ever, right? Wrestling being circus.
There's that, but you have to be able to maintain some level of disbelief, or else then it really does, ruin any ability to, like, when a guy throws a punch and it's 5 feet away from
Right.
somebody's face and the person still reacts, and you're like, no, that's not. You got to make it the part of there's a social contract that like is we will suspend our belief, our disbelief, but you got to make the effort to try to make it look real.
Right.
Otherwise, it's like kids fighting in a pool or something like that. There's no sense in where they're pretending to punch each other and they're 4 feet away, and then the guy obviously throws his head back. I mean, there's no level of professionalism in throwing a punch at somebody being 5 feet away from hitting him. And there's also no professionalism between just throwing a punch and hitting someone right in the face at full force. Because anyone can do that.
Even the selling aspect of it, where it's all pedal to the metal and no, no ebb and flow, because you're like they're more like a speedboat on a shallow pond as opposed to a big boat in the ocean swells. Different. It's very different, and to me, it's just too fast. I guess maybe it's set up for the kids with ADD and it can't really focus too much, but I don't see the ability to tell good stories if you're zipping around so much. I mean, if I'm pounding you in a corner for about a good 30 seconds and you walk it off like nothing happened, why did I waste my 20 seconds stomping your leg? So okay, so now you're impervious to pain. So now the believability just went out of it. I stomped the guy's leg. Anyone else you stomp their leg like that, they're rubbing a Charlie horse or something's going on. But the guy just walked it off like nothing, and that's what a lot of these young kids do. And
I have a
that's where I get
question.
this.
I have a question I don't think I ever asked you. In wrestling, who do you consider some of your mentors? Who taught you?
Well, I mean, aside from the guy that just trained, I mean, Mick Foley, when I was first breaking in, would come by a couple times and throw us around a little bit, and give us a little bit of advice, how to conduct yourself and stuff. So we kind of was like early on was one of the first guys because he lived on Long Island, right where I was. So, and I guess as I went along, I guess I got a little bit from Jimmy Snuka because of the Tommy D promotion, because he was like a staple with Tommy D. So he was the available guy, and he was the one that would one of the big pieces of advice, like to this day, I'll tell any the kids at the wrestling is, you're on the road, you're away from home, make sure you get a sewing kit. You could have a hole pop in your gimmick at any time. You need to fix it. Had something like that happen to me on the road. I'm like, oh crap! Snooker goes, come here, brother. Took out a sewing kit, fixed it for me, and he goes, remember that you're on the road. Things like this happen. You got to be, you got to be ready for anything. It's like little tidbits like that. Just guys in the locker room. Bill Eadie, Demolition Axe, another guy. Um, Billy Caputo. Let's not even just that wrestlers, referees. Let's not forget those guys. Those guys are equally important, if not.
Oh yeah, we had a whole thing on referees last week, so
The ref didn't see it. Great documentary.
you'd probably
Check it
like
out.
that if you have a chance to see that.
But, well, it's funny you say that because you remember when I was doing the bums gimmick with Damien Demento under the hood. We actually had a spot when the ref did a thing where it was like questionable thing where I had like this little handbag where I pulled out an eye chart with all these letters, and if you looked at it slowly, it said REF RU and then blind right under it.
Yeah.
the thing about that. But Billy Caputo, God rest his soul, and he was probably plastered all over the old WWF stuff. That blonde hair, you couldn't mistake him anywhere. A lot of big
Nice
main
guy,
event stuff.
nice guy. Everybody
Was
liked him.
actually a commissioner for New York State Athletic Commission for a while. And just in reffing my matches, and when he was out there, you didn't have to worry. Like everybody, one thing I hear all the time, and that's like I said, I shake my head every time I hear it. I'm like, they don't get it. Because guys, remember, stick to your times. I'm like, all right, who's wearing a fucking watch?
Yeah.
Come on. I said, the ref. The ref is usually the guy that looks at the timekeeper. Timekeeper signals the ref. Ref signals us time to go home. That's simple. My God, how do you screw that up? Guys, stick to your times. These guys are memorizing 7,000 spots. They're going to memorize when it's 7 minutes in? Come on. They're still trying to work on the seventh consecutive Canadian destroyer into the kip up. Yeah.
True. So, Chris, why don't you? We're at the end of the hour. It was delightful having you. We'd like to certainly have you on again when you have another project to promote. But why don't you tell our fans again how they can get a hold of you through social media and also, Pudgy's GoFundMe.
Well, the GoFundMe, I think I did post in your when I sent you an email, so I guess you could put that in the details in the chat, because it's a whole little thing you got to spell out, and I don't think anyone's going to sit there with a pen and copy it. Um, but we've we got the concert. We hope to get the details out like that. Even if we can just throw maybe next week we'll actually have the full details of that as a follow up to this. That would be great. Even if it's just Evan could just read off what we actually got. Uncle Billy Wrestler on Instagram and on Facebook, and you'll also look at NYWC Wrestling. That's in New York. You find them on Facebook, also on Instagram, X, Twitter, YouTube. Well, I guess not Twitter anymore. I guess X. So they're all over there. You'll find us on there on the roster. Look up Dirty Deeds. Rednecks, of course.
Spell it.
Yes, it's so Dirty DIRTY, obviously, and Deeds with a Z at the end. So that's the important part. And you'll see three of us. You'll see one guy with a 38-inch long beard, another guy with a big scruffy red beard, and you can't mistake the look. And some people said we look like we're related. And I'm like, does that mean inbred related or related like by because I mean, if it's inbred related, then I guess we'll actually look in the gimmick, right?
Sure.
And again, July 12th, Shillelagh Tavern in Astoria, 1 p.m. to 7 p.m. Come on out.
One day before my 64th birthday, too. Make it a happy birthday for me when we can tally up the thing. I just feel like Jerry Lewis. Let's do a tally up and have the number.
When I'm 64.
And Evan, you give a very quick plug for your book.
Wrestling rings, blackboards, and movie sets, 100 plus stories, and one of them is on Chris Michaels. So check that out.
Splendid. Well, also in the Bobby Lombardi section too, there's a story about Bobby in there
Chris
too.
is in the Bobby Lombardi piece.
And Evan's mom. Oh boy. Evan really was like, wow. He was like, everyone has like this picture up there. They have their mom on the shelf of sainthood. You're like, wow, mom was really hip back in her day. I didn't know. Wow.
Yeah. But now you do. So anyway, thank you for being part of the show tonight.
Really
great talking to you. And yes,
thanks again, Russell. I appreciate your.
We'll have you on soon, and best of luck to your dog.
Thanks, and Pudgy, appreciate you.
And Russ, just leave us on for a minute because I have to ask him something.
All right. But good night, everyone. We'll see everyone next week. Good night.